Today I want to talk about using the Tabata protocol and also heart rate monitors. That's my heart rate monitor. I'll show you. I'll show you what a good heart rate monitor can do for you. But anyway, uh, just of course the general medical warning. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a sports scientist. Anything I tell you, please be careful because the Tabata training takes you to absolute extremes of your threshold. So if you're not careful, you might hurt yourself. Tigray. So anyway, the Tabata protocol began in the late 90s, about 1996. A guy named Izumi Tabata. He was a sports scientist from the Ritsumeikan University in Tokyo. That's famous for its martial arts. Actually, the Ritsumeikan Daigaku University has a number of very high level martial arts groups, including the judo, Olympic judo, and he was interested to know if he could develop a protocol which was more time efficient. So what he did was create what is known as the Tabata protocol, the Tabata workout. And what he did is he actually took a couple of groups, a control group, which the control group was, I think they did they just worked on a heavy duty on a stationary bicycle for 1 hour at 70% capacity. So how do you know what your 70% capacity is? Well, that's where heart rate monitors are the bomb. I've been using these for as long as I can remember. Previously, you need a heart rate monitor, attaches to your watch. Sometimes you have watches that read your pulse. It's a little bit inaccurate because it doesn't work directly off the electric impulse of the heart. Okay, but a good heart rate monitor sits there and you read it off something. These days, I just read it straight off my mobile phone. So when Tabata Sensei does something like research with the Tabata protocol, he requires very accurate protocols to make sure that there's consistency. So his test group, he had a group working on a stationary bike at 70% of their VO2 max. So that means 70% of their ability to generate and continue to generate oxygen. Anything above that, you start to go into anaerobic, the area, which means you run into oxygen debt, and you can't maintain that for very long. The elite athletes of the world push that oxygen debt or that threshold higher and higher and higher. And this is where the max VO2 is such an important measurement. It's really vital and helps you to measure your total aerobic fitness because it literally tells you how well the body is using oxygen and how well it is converting ATP and allowing the adenosine triphosphate and allowing the body to get rid of the carbon dioxide and renew it with oxygen again. So that's why it's such an important measurement. Now, what Tabata did is he took that trial group and they would, for 5 days a week, they would pedal this bicycle for 1 hour at 70% capacity. And he got his test group, they would train 5 days. For the first 4 days, they would do 8 intervals using 20-second all-out sprints and 10-second rest. And they would repeat that for 8 rounds, so 1 4-minute round. And then on the last day, on the 5th day, they do a 30-minute moderate, easy ride with an extra 2 minutes at the end of the Tabata style. And he wanted to see what he could do by absolutely pushing super hard the limits of that threshold training. So he was using very high level athletes, or he was using Olympic athletes who are all very well trained. So that's the first thing you got to be careful of. People go out and try to do the Tabata protocol with 8 all-out rounds. Tabata himself said 6 or 7 rounds should be sufficient. If you can do all 8 rounds, you're not doing it hard enough. When I used to do the Tabata, what I would do is I'd get on a treadmill and I'd put the treadmill at 5 degrees, and then I'd pump it up to about, I can't remember, 15 kilometers an hour or whatever it was. It was a speed that absolutely needed me to almost sprint. And invariably, after about 5 rounds, I'd have to start to slow the machine down, or I just couldn't keep up. So that's how it should be done. If you can make 8 rounds, you're doing it incorrectly. And that's from Tabata himself. So anyway, the results that he got from this surprised him. The first group, which did the 1 hour at 70% of their VO2 max, or their max VO2, improved their aerobic capacity by just under 10%. That's in a 6-week period. 6 weeks, not very long. But even these guys were already elite athletes, and he measured them by doing that 1 hour, 70% of your VO2 max. He got an almost 9.5%, so an almost 10% improvement. But the other group, which he was using his ideas of what became known as the Tabata protocol, what they actually achieved just crazy levels, and it really surprised him. They not only increased the aerobic capacity by 14%, so they increased aerobic capacity more than the guys who are training 3 times longer. So for him, the protocol was about 20 minutes, 10-minute warm-up. The actual Tabata round was 4 minutes, and then a 3, 4, 5 minute warm down. So it was under 20 minutes, less than 30% or 33%, less than a third of the other group. But the other thing that he found out, which was quite amazing, was that they also increased their anaerobic capacity. In other words, their ability to continue beyond that anaerobic threshold by an incredible 28%. So why is this relevant to karate? Well, because tournaments are all about your ability to tolerate anaerobic threshold. It's very, very important. Yes, they did Marco, they did very accurate testing in a proper laboratory. I think you can go online. I haven't checked, but I'm quite sure you could probably go online and see at least photographs, because remember, it was in 96, so the internet was just getting going. You'll at least see photographs of the protocols where they would actually take live measurements of the oxygen transfer, and then they would test their blood as well. So that result really blew everyone away. And the main thing was that by taking his threshold way beyond, so we're not talking about 70%. Remember, the test group did 70% of the VO2 max. Okay, and you can calculate that through a number of formulas. Some are slightly more accurate than others. But to find out your maximal heart rate, generally speaking, the easiest and best known one is 220 minus your age. I know that is not always accurate, because if I look at my training from this morning, 220 minus my age, my maximal heart rate should be 157. And I was hitting, let's see if I open up my measurements for this morning. Hang on. I'll look at the workout. Where are we? Body weight. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I hit 161 max. My maximum, according to 220 minus my age, is 157. So that's just a guideline. In fact, the guys that did that 220 minus their age will tell you that they're surprised everybody took it on, because it was for a very specific demographic. But all the other attempts to find a more accurate calculation, and they're out there, that, you know, they take into account your resting heart rate, your age, and all these sort of things. They're out there, but they're all within a few beats per minute. Okay, so you find your maximal heart rate. The easiest way is probably 220 minus your age. Okay, now what Tabata sensei was actually saying was he had these guys going at 170% of their established max VO2. And this is where the protocol becomes so valuable, because VO2 max is just a measure or an indicator of how much oxygen your body can use and generate, or use and then circulate well and get rid of all that. It's a measurement of your aerobic fitness. And this is very relevant because in tournaments, I mean, if that was the only thing, that'd be a different thing. But in tournaments, it very much comes down to how well your body can continue to tolerate work at an anaerobic threshold level. And anyone who's fought tournaments will know when you go past that anaerobic threshold, you really hit a wall. It feels like you got lead weights in your hands. I remember the 1980, I digress a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit of story about my own tournament fighting if you're half interested. But in 1980, I was living on an island in North Australia, and I had no dojo, but I was training regularly. I was due to go to Surfers Paradise from Thursday Island to interpret for Masoyama. He was coming out for the Australian Championships in 1980. The day before, I got a phone call from my good friend Colin Greatrix. He was probably the head of the tournament organising committee. And he said, they've had word that Solsai wasn't coming out, Kuncho in those days. He wasn't coming. He said, but we've got your ticket. What do you want to do? You can come down anyway. I said, well, I'll come down and I'll fight. Now, I'd been doing some solid training. I used to do what I call countdowns, and I do hill sprints. My house on the island was on a hill. So I used to run a 6K circuit around the hill, and then I do these sprints up a hill. It was very dark ages sort of training. But anyway, I went down to Surfers Paradise. In the semi-final, I fought a guy named Clint McIntyre, really nice guy. I think he's Victoria, tall guy. And in those days, rounds were 3 minutes. So we fought a main round of 3 minutes, then an extension of 3 minutes, then an extension of 3 minutes, then an extension of 3 minutes. So 12 minutes. And they used to stop the clock. If the referee says, yummy, you had to come back in the ring, they'd pause the clock. So it wasn't really 4 rounds of 3 minutes for 12. It was more like a 15 or 20 minute round. Okay. Now, the other guy I ended up fighting, Jimmy Phillips, I fought him in the final. He fought in his semi-final before me. And he fought Sensei Brian Ellison, who was one of my instructors. Brian had a bad knee. Jim knew he had a bad knee. So he did a spin back kick into his knee, dislocated his knee. Brian got carried off the mat, and Jim's fight lasted about 15, 20 seconds. Good on him. Well done. But I came out, I went for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I came down off the stairs after having won the fight, and one gentleman who was the head of Australia, whose name shall not be mentioned, said to me, you're back up for the final. I literally said, give me 30 seconds to get my breath back. And he said, no, if you're not back on the stage in 30 seconds, I'll disqualify you for no show. And of course, I didn't know any better. I probably should have called his bluff because people wouldn't have accepted it. But anyway, I went back on stage and I fought Jimmy in the final, and we went 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and we're both exhausted. So I did probably 35 to 40 minutes non-stop. And in the end, I remember at one stage there, we've both thrown a kick and we fall down in a heap, and I kind of, get up and help Jim up, and it was a mess. These days, athletes have much better training protocols, so you don't see that sort of thing very often, other than from places where they haven't adopted these high levels of training. So anyway, that's an example of what happens when you hit that anaerobic wall. Your body just is like this. Okay. Of course, your VO2 max is affected by your age, your gender, even. That's why, I mean, if it wasn't affected by gender, you'd see a much closer time differential in women's and men's marathon or long distance running, but it's probably about 20 minutes difference, which is a fair bit. That's about 30 seconds difference per kilometer, okay, because of the gender difference. And your fitness level makes a big difference as well. And I became interested. Well, I'm not saying I became fascinated. Urs, Dave, good to see you, man. Congratulations on Marcus's event, on his confirmation. They were lovely photos. But anyway, I mean, it's not just a matter of the ability to tolerate that oxygen debt. That plays a big difference. There's also the mental ability to be able to tolerate mentally that fatigue and keep going under pressure. That's where people like, well, anyway, a lot of the top fighters that fight between, in fact, that pen, that ink illustration I used today to talk about this particular session was an image I did of Adamir da Costa and Michelle Vadel. That was an amazing match. That went 5 extensions. 2 guys, heavyweights, big heavyweights, maybe 15 kilograms difference. And then, you know, you had guys like Sampei Keiji, who second in the world twice, first in the All Japan. His ability to tolerate those extremes of endurance was renowned. Okay, so that's very important. Now, one of the reasons why I love these variables, one variable I didn't mention, you've got the age, you've got your fitness levels, you've got your gender, but another one which became very prevalent and interesting in the Mexico Olympics in '68 was the effect of altitude. And I remember when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about scientific training. I was only 9 or 10 years old at Mexico Olympics, but I found it fascinating to watch these guys. I guess it was the seeds of my future anyway. Watch these training programs where athletes all over the world were doing high altitude preparation for the Mexico Olympics, because the availability of oxygen at Mexico's level, I think, how is it, 2,500 meters, 7,000 feet in the air or something. So unless they did something about their body's ability to generate, to keep using oxygen well and really use it efficiently, because there's so much less of it, well, they wouldn't have got anywhere. So athletes all over the world were doing these high altitude training sessions, and a lot of really interesting things came out of that too. And I was intrigued by it as a little boy. I didn't do anything. I didn't start karate for a couple of years later, and it's not like I've gone in and said to Frank, oh, can we do some high altitude training because I think it's better. By that stage, I probably forgot about it, but I found it really interesting at the time. And seeing athletes train made me realize that you can make your body perform better if you train. That's what I learned the word training meant. Okay, so you can improve your max VO2 in a couple of ways. First of all, you do what's called HIIT, the high intensity interval training, and that's several minutes aerobic rest, that sort of thing. That's what the Tabata protocol is. But also you see that in karate training. This is why the normal session that you do in training, it normally goes 2.5 hours. We did it all the time when we were young. We don't do it so hard anymore, I have to admit. Well, I'm not ashamed of it. That's just the way it is. At my age, if I tried that, I'd last a day. But karate provides that series of high intensity sessions. You do the basics, and it's high intensity. And even in basics, there are some things you might do that give you a little bit of a rest. Then you hit the intensity again. And then you'll do some hard fitness work like what we call countdowns or push-ups, sit-ups, squats, burpees, the deck of cards, that sort of thing. And then you have more rest and you do a bit of kata and it's very restful. It's not really as hard training. And then you do the kumite, and of course, in some rounds it'll be easy, some rounds it'll be hard. So karate has this built-in process of high intensity interval training, and that's what's one of the beautiful things about it, and that's why you can get very fit with it. And another beautiful thing which helps you with your high intensity, that max VO2 training, is to switch up the sort of training. You kind of trick the body, and that's why I like the AutoCAD, the deck of cards, because when you shuffle up the cards, you don't know what's coming next, so you kind of trick the body. And training that varies the nature of the training is very good to improve your VO2 max as well, because and that's why karate is so good. You know, sometimes you're doing basics, sometimes you're doing the push-ups and sit-ups, sometimes you might be doing sprints, sometimes you're doing kumite. In my dojo, you might be on the ground wrestling. So all that sort of thing offers a really wide range of intense movement that's very different. Us, Kenneth, good to see you. So it offers that range of intensity that is different from exercise to exercise. And these all really benefit your max VO2. You know, and there are other incredible benefits. I don't need to go into them. You know about it, that when you increase your aerobic capacity, you improve everything in your body. You know, your fitness improves, athletes in tournaments, the fatigue that you suffer from is less. Your ability to tolerate that threshold is good. And also it's a very strong predictor of quality of life as you get older. I'm 63 now, and my body, primarily the problem now is just a couple of injuries that I'm carrying from one from running and the other one from holding mitts and getting whacked. You know, injuries over the years accumulate, but as long as your posture is good and your aerobic capacity is good, well, then it's surprising how youthful you can go on living your life. And I think that's very important. And I think when you get away from the aerobic fitness, then you go into the threshold of anaerobic fitness. So you know when you're running and you're running hard, and you can run pretty well. If you didn't run out of energy, the glycogen supplies, you could keep running below your threshold for a fairly solid length of time. So this is why Tabata, when he was doing his original research, had the first group going at 70% of their max VO2. And that allowed them to maintain that pace for 1 hour. And if you watch the Tour de France, it's always fascinating because, especially in the mountains, these guys are right on the edge of their threshold, and they all have heart rate monitors, and they all have a monitor on their bike that is reading out their heart rate. And they all know instinctively, or they've been taught, they know exactly what their ranges are. And generally there are 4 heart rate ranges that you work through. And if you go past a certain heart rate, it puts you into that DET range. It puts you into that anaerobic range. So you'll see some riders, and they'll want to try and catch up, but they know they absolutely can't because there's 100 Ks to go, and they don't want to push themselves into a level of debt. The prodigal chum, good on you, man. Thanks. Yeah, give me some likes. Yeah, by the way, while you mention it, I'll mention Patreon. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm working on a little booklet for you to send out to everybody, and I really appreciate your support. It literally is helping me to survive sometimes from week to week. I haven't worked in my job since January last year, January 2020, December 2019, January 2020. So it's been a long time between drinks, and I'm doing things like these. Last month, I think I made $13.20 on YouTube. Maybe as the numbers get up, I'll hit the $20 mark. So, Patreon, thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Help me hit 2,000 subscribers, and I'll get on a roll after that. Us, Mike, good to see you. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Javier KO, us from Mar del Plata, Argentina. Argentina. Good on you, Javier. Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming along. So let's continue on with this. So that ability to tolerate your threshold, continue working at an optimal level whilst you're in that debt, is a universal yardstick for fitness. There are certain things that you can do. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, they have a thing called the talk test when you're running long distance. When I used to run marathons, if I run with someone, we take our measurement on the ability to have a conversation. If you can continue a conversation, even though you're breathing hard, it meant you were able to continue to produce oxygen at a manageable level. To continue to use oxygen at a manageable level, produce ATP. But once you went over a certain threshold and you start talking and you need to take breaths between your answer, okay, then you've hit the threshold, you're into oxygen debt. And that's when you blow up. And that sort of oxygen debt training, the interval training, is really, really important for developing high level of tournament fighting. Ocean, how does one get a copy of logbook? Look, you may have contacted me. I have some here in Australia. Unfortunately, I don't have sources of supply around the world, but I have plenty. And please send me an email at that email address and I'll address it. I've got a couple of people have asked, and I'm a little bit slack in replying because I'm trying to work out the best way to get it overseas. The logbooks are like 25 Australian, but sometimes the cost of postage is more than the logbook. So sometimes you'll need more than one eventually. So I'm encouraging people to maybe get 4 logbooks, and that way the cost per unit to send is much less. But anyway, contact me, Prodigal, I'll call you that, and I'll get back to you. Dave, I'm starting to see hockey players as young as 11 and 12 years old here doing stair runs with heart monitors. What are my thoughts on juniors training that way? Too young. The only reason, Dave, I'd say it's too young is the effect on the joints. If they're running up the stairs, generally the pressure on the knees and lower back is much level than running down the stairs. But if these kids have been encouraged to sprint down the stairs, the long-term effects on lower back and knees are just unforgivable. So in my dojo, kids under a certain under 12, or if they're 12 and they're clearly matured a lot earlier, they're not allowed to do full push-ups even, because they haven't got the structure in their core area to integrate everything strongly enough, because their lower back, the bones are still cartilage, their bones are still growing. And it's that I couldn't tell you how often I've seen people who didn't recognize the importance of protecting bone growth, bone plates, bone growth in children, the effect it can have later on in life. I had one lady who said, could she come and help me with her son, who was a top-level rower in grade 12. She said he has back problems. And I went around, met the son, and oh my God, it was unbelievable. Because of the nature of what he'd been doing without ever being taught the importance of flexibility work to protect against injury, his lower back was an absolute mess. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing yoga could do. The only thing, I'm not kidding, this kid was 18. The only thing they could do in the end was actually operate and snip some of his tendons and add extra length in the tendons to overcome the damage that had been created in his childhood through poor training protocols. It was a nightmare. That kid is going to have problems when he's 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, so in terms of aerobic, this sort of stair runs to develop that threshold, I don't think the problem is the age, Dave. I think the problem is the effect on the joints. I don't think I haven't studied it enough, but I don't anticipate that sort of aerobic threshold training can worry kids. I don't think it's a major problem. But what I would be inclined to do is follow a similar protocol to the Tabata protocol. And if you're working with Marcus, even, or other kids, use things like cross-country skiing, which has far less effect on joints. And what you can do is work on pushing really hard up slight hills, and then doing that in the protocols. Otherwise, get on a bicycle or a treadmill. Put the treadmill at a steep slope. Even today when I run, sometimes I can't run long distances because of my knee, but I'll jump on the treadmill and I'll put it at 15 degrees and I'll take it to my aerobic threshold and I'll play slowing down, speeding up, that sort of thing that way. But by all means, kids that age need to protect their lower back, their hips and their joints. And it's a travesty that kids reach maturity and their body's already damaged. Okay, so this sort of training, very, very demanding physically and mentally. And this is why you'll see, if you go to the internet and look up Tabata protocol, there's 1,000 different variations based mainly on people's unwillingness and inability to push themselves so hard past their threshold. And that's the whole key to making the Tabatas work. Okay? Having said that, it means we're not all Olympic athletes. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with winding it back in the stages of building up. So everybody's VO2 max, everybody's threshold is different. So you measure it off your own threshold. And what you do is you can go online. There are different ways. You can find your aerobic output. You can find your zones, your heart rate zones, and use that for yourself. Even Tabata himself, as I said, he recommends that if you're doing it, you aim for 8 rounds, but if you're doing it correctly, he's surprised if you get through 6 or 7. But for people who are just starting the protocol, here's my recommendation. Get on a treadmill and put it up slightly. That's what I used to do. Put it up slightly, and then you set the treadmill at a pace which is your sprint pace plus a little more. And you have the handles on the side of the treadmill. So you have to use them and practice before you do it. You really need to practice lifting your weight off, putting your feet on the sides of the treadmill, lifting your weight up, start to move and sprint. And then what I would do is I would have that at about 5 degrees. Sometimes I go higher, but I put it 5 degrees at 15 or 17 kilometers an hour, just above my sprint pace. And then I'd start a stopwatch. And then it has to be 20 seconds of threshold work and 10 seconds rest. So what I do is I'd set the clock, and when it hit the 0, I'd go 10 seconds, and then I'd start to get ready. And then as soon as it hit 10 seconds, I'd be sprinting and sprint, and you'd sprint like nuts. And then on the 20, 19, 20 second, you'd lift yourself off again and rest for 10 seconds. At about 9 seconds, you lift yourself back on, and you'd continue that. And if you're doing it correctly, I found that after about 4 or 5 rounds, I was totaled. And so there's nothing wrong with slowing it right down and warming down. If you can do that and aim for achieving 2 maximal rounds, you will be surprised, one, at how crazy hard it is, because you are pushing your threshold past 100%. Has to go way past 100%. Even though today I hit like I said, my suggested threshold at my age is 157. I hit 161, and sometimes I can. When I used to have, when I was running, I had a heart monitor. on my wrist. I could watch it. I had the heart monitor here and the reader was here, and it's not unusual on a hard hill sprint to hit 170, 171. So there is no problem, provided you're fit, you've got no cardiovascular problems, of pushing yourself way past what is considered to be your max. That's the whole idea of the Tabata protocol. Okay. And if you can get 2 really solid rounds out, that's really good. And then you just aim for 3. But never fall into the trap of thinking that Tabata protocol is a 4-minute round consisting of 8 20 seconds and a 10 seconds break. So therefore, I have to do that. And then bringing your threshold, bringing your intensity level back to a point where you can easily, when I say easily, really hard work, but easily finish 8 rounds, because you're not fulfilling the objective of that protocol, and you won't get the same returns. For the average person, I would actually say 3 times a week maximum is enough. You need to give yourself time in between each one. Tabata was using Olympic athletes. He was doing it 5 days a week. He would get them to do 4 Tabata sessions, and the 5th day he would get them to do a much easier session. So if Olympic athletes are pushing out 4 sessions plus 1, well, then I don't think it hurts to focus on maybe 2 a week. The demands psychologically and physically are pretty intense. So don't expect miracles of yourself, but you can find there are ways to, for example, I know when I ride a bike, if I go for a 1-hour ride on my bike, I have a pretty good idea of how I'm going, because I'll get, my heart rate will tell me, like today, I was sitting on an average of 90 revs a minute, and my average heart rate was 139 beats for the hour, and I did 28.3 kilometers. So there are ways that you can judge your improvement without expecting to find that in your Tabatas. I mean, you're not looking at the Tabatas to measure your fitness. You're looking at the Tabatas to improve your both anaerobic and aerobic fitness levels. And that's what the beautiful thing that Tabata himself pointed out. He said that the Tabata protocol is an excellent time-efficient way to train both your aerobic and anaerobic systems. So for any instructors who have teams of fighters and so on, it doesn't hurt once a week at least to create a protocol as close as you can to the Tabata protocol, where you're absolutely smashing thresholds for 20 seconds and then rest. And the rest is total rest. You kind of stand still or hardly move at all. If Dave, for example, you're working with the young Lions kids, you might find a hill or a very steep hill, and you have a whistle, and then you have them at the bottom of the hill and you smash it for 20 seconds, and they really have to sprint. No trying to save yourself. A Tabata protocol has no room for trying to save your energy. You have to absolutely sprint beyond your capacity to the point where you're just like dead. And then you rest for 10 seconds, and then you do another one maximally. You have to encourage the young lions to encourage each other and push each other and compete against each other. And especially you got to watch out for the kids who are faster, because when they're faster, they think it's okay to slow down a bit. And then you do that, and then you do that once a week, and then you do that once a week for a couple of weeks, then add another one twice a week, and then you make it 3 times, 3 reps, and then you build up to where they're falling over themselves after 5 or 6 reps. And that's a really excellent way to develop their threshold capacity. What sort of exercise are you recommend for lower back and spine tightness? to loosen up the joints, especially as a result of rigidness caused by cold weather in general? Well, cold weather general, you have to warm up, just even walking and warming up, but also other good exercises for the lower back, obviously stretching exercises. You can do a downward dog exercise. Greet the sun. Let me show you quickly. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't. Phil, it's good to see you, Marco. Sounds like training the dad has his boys doing in Coolangatta Gold. Marco, I was in that movie. I built the karate studio in that movie, and I had a couple of spots as an extra. It's not even a case of if you blink, you'll miss me, because if you don't know it's me, you won't know it's me. It's dark. But anyway, yeah, I had a lot to do with that Gold Coast, that Coolangatta Gold movie. And you're right, he was like, that whole movie was about a driven dad doing those sprints up the hills just not far from here. Those hill scenes, Marco, I'm here in Currumbin. They were filmed in Currumbin Valley, a few k's up the mountain. Okay, so Tigray's asked a good exercise for lower back. The first, I haven't warmed up one little bit, but this 3-count exercise that we do in training, that's good, provided you loosen and let gravity do the work. So this one, and then you turn, you push the hip flexors, you turn, and then you come around again, and you turn into here. Now, I know this is primarily a stretch for here, but if you loosen up and just let gravity do the work and sit there for a few breaths. And loosen every breath, let it loosen a little more. And you do that. You only have to do that once or twice each side. Nice and relaxed. Remember, you grab a stretch. Remember the acronym for stretching. You grab a stretch. The G is gravity. You let gravity do the stretch for you. You don't fight it and think you're stretching. You let gravity do the stretch. The R in grab is relaxation. The A is the angle and alignment. You don't want to be doing a stretch one way, but align your body the wrong way. You pull muscles. And the B is breath. So you coordinate it with your breath. 2. Hip flexor stretch, really important. And then 3, you come right around. This is my bad knee that I have no knee. So you can see I can't get full flexion even though I work on it all the time. So this is a good stretch for lower back. Then you can do the greet the sun. So basically greet the sun is like this. Stretching up, breathing in. So the greet the sun is a beautiful exercise because it has a counter stretch to every stretch. You bend forward, bend back, bend forward, bend back. When you bend back, you breathe in. When you bend forward, you breathe out. It's that simple. I haven't done it for a while, but anyway. Stretch up, breathe in. Stretch out, breathe out. Breathe in. Hold the breath. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And this part of the stretch is very important. Try to lengthen the distance from your hands to your butt. You see how I'm kind of like that? But I really want to go all the way. Whether your heels are on the ground or not, it's not that important. But you want to concentrate on lengthening from your butt to your fingertips. Relaxing your neck. Very good for your neck too. You let gravity take the neck down. So in this position, you breathe 3 or 4 times. You breathe in, come up. For beginners, you can just walk up like that. Breathe out. Breathe in. That's a good stretch for your lower back. And then, of course, sitting and just relaxing the lower back. Sit there like that. What I tend to do when I'm doing this exercise, I just relax. I breathe in and spider fingers. So I spider fingers when I breathe in. So I'm sitting here. The first level is to get off your coccyx. Some people are back here like this. First level is you need to get on your hip bones like that. So you push off the back. Once you can sit there without having to use your hands, then you just come forward. Then you breathe in, out, and then you just relax. Every time you breathe in, look at my fingers. Every time you breathe in, you just crawl. The next level is to get your elbows on the ground. Breathe in. And you just give it time, Tigray. You just give it time. Any exercise like that you can stretch like that takes time. The beauty of flexibility work is that, oh, you see, I've got my Thursday Island t-shirt on. I mentioned Thursday Island before. This was a gift from my buddy Muti. Yeah, that's. Remember, I earlier mentioned in 1980 when I was fighting in the 1980 National. This is where I was living. I went up and visited Muti May last year for his 70th birthday, and he gave this to me. But anyway, I digress. Let me see if I can get away from that light. So I hope that gives you an idea of the best way to deal with lower back and spinal tightness. You have to work on your spine, lower back particularly. As you get older, you need to really, really be careful of or be aware of your spinal flexibility, because you see old people, they start to bend over. So you constantly have to be aware of good posture, pulling your posture back. Okay. In the morning, I tend to do some exercises like this and this sort of thing. Anything that will improve and open the spine. Anything like that, you've got to constantly keep conscious of your posture, shoulder blades back, chest high, that sort of thing. If you don't, it's never going to work. You have to watch your spinal posture as you get older. Marco, even if you watch it again, you won't see me. But there's a scene where they've been training karate. He's looking out the window at the ballet studio, and then afterwards they come down the spiral staircase, jump on their motorbikes. Well, I was one of those guys, and when you hear the sound of that Kawasaki 900 taking off, that's me. My touch with fame. I sat back and waited for my agent to contact me. Never happened. Okay, so one of the things about the Tabata protocol and training in general with your heart, your aerobic capacity, is a heart rate monitor. I use this one. I put it under my shirt, but it attaches here. Put it on. You see there's lights. I can see lights go on and off here. There's a blue light and a red light. Tells me the battery's good, and then it's reading. Now, if I go to, even though it's on top of my shirt, if I go to the Wahoo, okay, so I don't even need a monitor on my wrist. It's just straight on my watch, and you can see this is a readout of this morning's levels. This does 5. E, which for me is up to 100 beats. Fat burn up to 115. Maybe I should spend more time in that one. 116, 127. Hard, 125. And peak, 146. And so you can see this. I don't think this is this morning because I went harder than that this morning. But you can that level and gives you feedback. So this one, 4%, 11%, 45% in cardio, 38% in hard, and 2%. I have a feeling that wasn't today's. Let me go to today's, because I think I really smashed myself today. Worked pretty hard. So here we go. You can see with this one now, I've got 5% in easy, 6% in fat, 5% in cardio, 56% in hard, so that's in the hard zone, and 28% in the peak zone. So a good heart rate monitor is really good to help you determine the level that you're working at. And I don't have to carry this on the bike, it's just in my pocket in the back, but I have a reader on my handlebar that gives me my cadence, it gives me my speed, it gives me my heart rate, and I can go off that. So if I'm working hard to maintain a certain cadence, I can tell by the monitor whether or not I'm going over the threshold too much. Yeah, indeed. Yes, it is. Similar to Okinawa, they use the turtle shell. They used to use that as a shield, and they used to use a whale bone or a dugong bone as a weapon, Marco. So a good heart rate monitor will bring you value like you wouldn't believe. I use Wahoo simply because the speedo on my bike is Wahoo, and you won't see it here because I don't have things connected, but this monitor reads my cadence. I try to keep my pedal speed at in a certain range. It reads my heart rate and it reads my speed all on one. So that's really, really a wonderful tool to have, and you can use that tool really well if you're doing something like Tabatas and you need to push yourself way, way, way past your threshold. You can tell if you're going hard enough on this. This will tell you. At my age, if my max is 157 and I'm pushing to 171, 72, then I can be certain that I'm way past my threshold. And the best way to do it is with a heart rate monitor. So for instructors, using the Tabata protocol is a fantastic way to improve the general metrics of your fighters. No matter how good their technique is, if they run out of juice, you just got to read the Bible. Ecclesiastes 7:8. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. That was made for that, and Psalm 144 are made for fighters. Psalm 44, praise be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for battle and my fingers for war. And I think it's really valuable to train the athletes not only to be able to be conscious of the level of their own fitness, but also have a monitor to be able to judge the level that they're at any time. Kenneth, hi Kenneth. What brand is the best heart rate monitor? Look, there is no particular brand. You need a monitor and an app. And apps are good because you don't need a watch. In the old days when I needed a watch, it was always hard to do kumite and so on with a watch on. But if you have a monitor, you just sit the monitor up there and you're away. So the best thing to do, Kenneth, is go online, look at comparisons, look at reviews, find out which ones work well with an app on your phone. Wahoo is fantastic because Wahoo is particularly good for its connectability to a wide range of apps, and also if you want to ride your bike, it connects well to the Wahoo Speedo that I have. But anyway, I hope you got something out of that. Tabatas are really valuable if they're done correctly. The problem is most people underbake them. They think that the whole key is to get the 8 rounds out. And sometimes they'll even do more. Yeah, we're doing Tabatas today. Oh, that's good. What do you do? Well, we're doing 18 rounds of Tabata. No, it's impossible. Impossible. I would bet London to a brick that there isn't a human being in the world, if they do the Tabata protocol correctly, can get past 10 rounds. Do the protocol correctly. Develop the capacity, and away you go. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you coming along once again. Don't forget, if you've subscribed and hit a like, leave a message, all that stuff, and pass the word around to your friends. Help me grow the channel, so I can have 2 million subscribers by December. 2,000 subscribers by December.